Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward moving spouse with a bomb drop of April 1st, 2021 and a date of marriage of 2004. She has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. She says, is it a sign of midlife crisis that they pull away from their old friends? My husband used to coach our kids' sports team, but he was kicked out last year because he started abusing alcohol and he got drunk in front of the children on the team a few times. I don't see him drinking anymore, at least in front of me and our children. He started reconnecting with the kids since 4 to 5 months ago, and he takes the kids to their sports team parties. But he stays away from other parents at the family party, even though they used to be great friends for us, and he loved family parties. I don't think anyone on the team knows that we're separated. He doesn't tell anyone, and I don't either. Is this a sign of replay that he pulls away from old friends? Or is this withdrawal? Or maybe he understands that he messed up by drinking last season and he feels ashamed. Or maybe it's all of those. So, yeah, this is normal. In midlife crisis, they get a whole new batch of friends often, unless some of their regular friends are going through similar things and are validating this new lifestyle. Maybe sometimes they have always had a friend that always was pulling them that way. Divorce is contagious, that sort of thing. But oftentimes they won't find those friends and they get friends that will validate it. Chuck's best friend was single. I don't know if he had a girlfriend at that time. He had a girlfriend at one. They broke up and he might have had another one. He has now had a girlfriend since the end of Chuck's midlife crisis through now. So for the last 15, 16 years. But back then he was single and he lived a few blocks away from us. We'd head over to his house often on Friday nights and it was just kind of a hangout. And he's always the one my joke was, he's the type of guy who will help you bury the body. But you know what? I was wrong. He did not help Chuck and help him continue in his crisis. He may have been his friend during it. He was still his friend. But Chuck started avoiding Scott, his friend, whenever he left home again. And Scott would call and say, what's going on? Is he there? And I said, oh, he left again. And he's like, oh, that's why he hasn't called. And I was surprised. I said, he avoids you? And he's like, yeah, every time. When he starts to pull away from you, he pulls away from me too. Scott's not my friend. I mean, I hang out with Scott, but it's a friend through Chuck. And they're best friends. Been best friends. They grew up around the corners together, and his mom still lives there. His parents lived there until both of them died. So, whole life. And he didn't give him up. But Scott didn't pull him away, and so he started to pull away from him every time he wasn't home. Now, remember, I had a clinging boomerang. So when Chuck did come home, he'd call Scott. It's normal. They pull away from anyone who is going to be an obstacle and challenge or be critical of their new lifestyle. They pull away from the children. They pull away from their family. They pull away from parents, even if those parents are going to be critical. Blood isn't always thicker than water, sometimes. So everything you're experiencing that is normal. It's also normal that he hasn't told anybody. It's up to you if you want to tell him. Don't enable him by not telling them. But also, don't help it along by telling him either. It's your decision. If you think that in not telling people you are enabling him to continue going on and pretending, then maybe you would want to start saying, hey, you know what? We're separated. But if you were working on being together and you didn't want people to treat him differently and you thought that it was a better situation for him to come home to someday, go ahead. It depends on how close those people are to your life, how betrayed they would feel, maybe, or just how it is enabling him to continue running. And he's at a point where he's going to continue running anyway. But is it keeping him from coming back or not? And you're not describing that at all at this point. You're just wondering why he's doing it. And yeah, it's normal. It has nothing to do with withdrawal. It is more of an escape and avoid, which as replay. And just as a side note, I'm not into withdrawal. I don't really recognize a stage called withdrawal. In fact, when Jim Conway created the stages of midlife crisis, you may have seen those stages as Heart's Blessings, and she did so much better of a job at describing those stages than Jim. But they came from Jim Conway's book, Men in Midlife Crisis, and then she took those stages and she explained them, the stages that he created, but he didn't really create them either because they're Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of death and dying or stages of grief. And Jim admits that. He doesn't say, hey, I created these, but he did add one. He added a stage of withdrawal. That was not included in Kubler-Ross's stages. And it's just one that seems a little confusing, and they're withdrawing all the time. They're withdrawing as part of pursuit and distance. That's the distancing. Is it alienated withdrawal? There are so many different ways and times of withdrawal that it's confusing to call it a stage, because then you're always thinking they're in withdrawal. And I see it constantly on the forums. I think mine is in withdrawal. If you think your husband is in withdrawal or your wife is in withdrawal, probably not, in the sense of what Conway was talking about, because everybody thinks that, because you're always seeing some form of, if they're not pursuing, they're distancing, unless it's just been consistent. So they're not withdrawal. They've already withdrawn ages ago and just stayed that way. It's confusing. But everything that he's going through, yeah, he's probably ashamed. He doesn't want to tell and he's reintegrating himself back into these parties when he was let go from having abused alcohol. That's embarrassing. And it's good he feels shame. But he's also stepping out there and still putting himself out there, even if he's not talking to them yet. Give him some time to do that. He's still in replay. April 2021, it hasn't been 2 years yet. You're past 18 months. What are you at? 20 to 21 months right now. He's still in replay, most likely. And he's still running, but he's taking a step forward by just taking the children to these sporting events that were something that he was involved in. So he's on a good track right now. And I hope this is helpful for you. It's just normal. And I'll see everybody in the next question.